the sticks and bricks analogy is very much like healthcare, flesh and bones. When you're dealing with the human biology, or when you're dealing with, where people live, right? And the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, these are some of the most critical things that affect your sense of experience in the world, is where you live and how you live and the experiences around that. That's going to be heavily regulated, because if things go wrong, they can really go wrong.
100%.
And I think, you touched on that too. The red tape, the bureaucracy, the legislation is perhaps holding back the industry. Now, I want to shift on that note to talk about...
Zain, do you mind if I add something to the red tape? So my partner, who we'll talk about in a second, and obviously our backgrounds, I assume, but when we were building what we were building, and obviously still building, one of the mindsets we've always had is, don't reinvent the wheel. We're trying to have our process disguised as regular construction, because we don't want to fight the red tape, because that's not a battle you could win. When you're doing things that are a bit more nuanced, right? And 3D printing is incredibly interesting, alternative materials, but you're kind of at the whim of something you can't control, which is, the legislative side of construction. Because like you said, when you build buildings and you're building a 100-unit multifamily building, you're putting 100, people, potentially more, depending on the density, at risk. And that's why, it's so slow to move and adopt to new materials, technologies, et cetera, is because, if things work, don't break them, right? That's kind of the mentality.
Well, not just that, and this is exactly where I wanted to go next, is you have a lot of great underlying IP and technology, but how you position it's key. And in some ways, to sort of paraphrase what you're saying, dumb it down and make it easy to understand. If you can tie what you're offering to some of the biggest problems in the world, affordability, humans need shelter, they need safety. You're going to gain adoption if you come in with this very high-tech, scary, AI-driven pitch. You're going to be bound by confusion, where regulators and committees and local council boards are going to be very confused about how to deal with this, and they're going to inevitably slow you down because they want to protect people. You've got to shift the industry from thinking about protecting people against technology to solving their core need, which is creating more affordable housing and solving some of the problems that exist with the construction industry overall.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say that, because construction is to blame for some of the prices, right? And where affordability is going. And it's probably the biggest crisis we don't talk about in the US enough. Well, I guess we're starting to now, right? But if you look at basis, right? Basis is one thing, but part of basis is the construction piece. And people keep blaming materials, right? As we've seen kind of in the last year, lumber prices skyrocket. And yeah, but ironically, materials are only 30% of the construction cost, right? If you look at $1 per square foot, 30% is materials related, 70% is labor. And going back to the labor, it's because young people aren't replenishing the labor force that's kind of coming out and retiring. And these are a lot of trade skills, right, that take time to replenish. You have to train someone, you have to certify someone, et cetera. So that's why you're seeing on construction sites now, electricians, plumbers making $80 an hour. And developers, they still want their margin, right? So that's why you're seeing prices go up so high. You're seeing, rents, housing, it's not attainable at this point. So construction solves a lot of things. If you can figure out how to bring that price point down through basis, you're unlocking more opportunity for developers and incentivizing them to build more, even if land basis continues to go up, and thus they can pass those cost savings down to the consumer. And part of that also is the reason why you're seeing it's the right political word. I mean, you're seeing crappy product being delivered, not just across housing, but everything from office to hospitals. And the product is crappy because developers are fighting a cost game, and they're incentivized to build whatever is cheapest for them to produce the highest margin. That's why, when you look at buildings, that's why buildings aren't built to the same standard as a beautiful iPhone or, a Tesla. It's because there's a cost equation that you're playing with.
And technology can come in and expand margins for everyone involved. And what you're doing is flipping it on its head, changing the entire way. Rather than building on site, you build off site. Talk to us a bit about this trend, and not just diving into your company, but also there's a whole wave of prefab modular companies out there. I personally invested in Boxable, which is also trying to be like the Amazon or Tesla of housing. Talk to us about this trend and a bit about where Cuby fits in that mega trend. Yeah,
let's take a step back for a second, which is a fun history lesson. But if you look at prefab has literally existed for decades. If you look at the Soviet Union, those big concrete panels that were produced to build Soviet housing, the Soviets have had this for the last 60, 50 years. It's nothing new, this concept of prefab. And then there was this emergence of modular, where someone, builds a box outfitted with essentially, building, right? That just stacks on top, rooms, bathrooms, etc. The problem with modular, at least the way we look at it, is this concept of producing a product and then selling it to a developer. It becomes very binary, right? There's not a lot of level of customization, and you truly need asset classes in real estate that are repeatable in quality. So think about producing 100 of the same Hiltons or 100 of the same McDonald's. That works, but unfortunately, most of real estate is very custom, right? Every piece of real estate is unique. Even if developer A and developer B build a building next door to each other, same basis and cost, unfortunately, they always come out different. And that's kind of the problem with construction altogether, is how could that be if you can produce the same Toyota, right? If you're buying a Toyota Camry and the guy behind you and the next car in the production line comes out different, that's a big problem because you just paid the same price.
And also on the investor side, it's very frustrating when you're trying to pencil budgets together and you have overruns and you think to yourself, why is this happening? This shouldn't happen. Why are there so many surprises? And that sensitivity, the variance of a budget can destroy your returns as an investor. You take a lot of risk in the investment side of things, on the principal side. When you start to go into construction, your level of risk and a lot of unknowns are phenomenal.
No, 100%. But exactly, and the issue is when modular emerged, right? Modular is perfect when you're building hotels, when you have this repeatable product. But still, right? Modular too, you have these gigafactories that are producing this box, right? And the thing with this box is, it's not properly manufacturing. Yes, there's some component of an assembly line or a conveyor belt, but really what these groups have done, they've just taken a construction worker, some guy or girl with a hard hat that's just doing the same construction process just under the roof of a warehouse. Nothing about that mimics the way Toyota builds cars. And if you've ever read The Toyota Way, it's an incredible book. My co-founder, Oleg, he lives by that entire principle, which is how do you make that conveyor belt better, optimized, create a better efficiency, a process behind it, etc. So modular is one element of that, where you're just building a binary box and a developer has to agree whether it fits into their project or not, because that's a focus on an end product. Whereas we believe you need to focus on the process. Prefab is a little better in the sense that prefab allows you to customize a bit more. In prefab, you're really producing just different kits of parts to a building off-site, flat packing, or just shipping them to the construction site. But again, in both those instances, you're faced with the issue that even if their process works, even if this process is great, and even if it is lean manufacturing, you lose all the benefits of productization, labor hour reductions, and efficiencies because you're adding this element of 3,000-4,000 miles in between. And by the way, that's a big impact on CO2 emissions. Even if you're flat packing timber, right? The fact that you have to go and transport it 3,000 miles, that's kind of a big thing no one's talking about, and they will be at scale.
And you're not simply, packaging up a letter via FedEx. Here you need permits, you need security escorts, you're
oh my God, imagine taking 100 of these, 20 by 20 or 20 by 40 panels, right? You need hundreds of those shipped to the construction site, and you need the different parts. So exactly, it's not like mailing a FedEx envelope. You're talking about convoys going from A to B, which is why everyone's...
In some cases, you're shutting down streets, you're getting permission, you're getting police escorts, the level of complexity with logistics. And this is something that, out of the box, yes, you can buy these modular prefab homes for, 50,000. But what you forget is you might spend 20, 30,000 just on transport and installation and setup. And this is, I believe, the reason why companies like Amazon are building warehouses all throughout the US to figure out that last mile delivery. The further you are from the customer, the more complexity there is, and it sort of increases non-linearly. Super linearly, in that the further away you are, the more complicated it is. Especially when you're dealing with big, we're talking about sticks and bricks here, combined together.
100%. And I think that's where prefab is now heading towards. Everyone's trying to have a local factory or work with a local factory to produce their product because they realize that there's, a big constraint. Here's the thing though, even if you build a local factory, at some point that local factory will build everything it needs to build in the serviceable area, right? Because, at some point you run out of space, you've built everything you needed to build in that geographic region. So what do you do then? Does that plant shut down? What happens? That's why we kind of approached it with these movable factory approaches, which we can talk about down the line. But yeah, if you look at the industry as a whole, I mean, prefab and modular are great, but so far, no one's emerged as kind of the player. No one's integrated with everyone. It's kind of this still also fragmented approach, and everyone has a different solution. And I'm really glad that there's all these players focused on it, because like I said, the next Tesla will come from this industry.